So, what happens when the master of horror writes a fairy tale? Easy. You get a really dark fairy tale, but in a really good way. I just finished Stephen King's Fairy Tale. This was on my list for this year. It was one of my longer books, but it actually wasn't as long as I thought, or at least it didn't feel that way, I should say. At its core, Fairy Tale was a story about grief. And it was really well done. It was about the things that grief can do to us, can do to our parents, that you can't understand as a child, these connections, these relationships that exist outside of you that are affected by grief. It was just a really interesting exploration of like loss and the things that we'll do for the people that we love, or in this case, the dogs that we love. It turns out I'm a sucker for a story where it's about a man and his dog. I just love a man and his dog. I'm thinking of like Malazan because you got Ganos and the Hounds, and now I've got Fairy Tale with Radar. This was a really cute story. I like this a lot. He did a great job of capturing like the feeling of a fairy tale. I definitely felt like I was reading some kind of like retelling of every myth and every fairy story and every grim fairy tale that I had ever heard before. It was nice to see Stephen King kind of re-adopt his fantasy roots. The Dragon's Eye was a book that I loved. I loved that book. That was actually one of my like first exposures to Stephen King. This felt like a very matured, lighter, less dark version of Dragon's Eye. However, you can take the man out of the horror, but you can't take the horror out of the man. So you do still get some like creepy horror, dark elements in here, but I thought that it really worked. And he wrote them in a way that felt like, not like a dark fairy tale, but like a gray fairy tale maybe. And that's a good joke. And when you read this book, you'll be like, oh, dang, that was a good joke, because it was a good joke. I did kind of cruise through this. I enjoyed it a lot. I just thought it was super smooth to read. It was told really well. It was broken up really well. I liked how he structured it. I think that the boy's love for the dog was really great. Like, I really enjoyed Charlie's love for his dog. I thought that was very cute. But it was like, you got all these fantastical characters that were all reminiscent of fairy tale characters. And like, it felt like a grown-up version of a children's story, which I've had twice in a row now, which is very weird. He closed every single loop. Nothing was clean. He made me kind of sad. He made me really hopeful, but like, you knew it was going to have a happy ending. And I kind of liked that. I kind of enjoyed it because I read a lot of sad books and I was a little tired of being sad. And it was nice to not be sad. My criticism is a common criticism I tend to have for Stephen King books, where I really love his buildup, but I feel like he sometimes doesn't stick the landing in a way that I feel satisfied by. And so I don't necessarily want to say that the denouement with the bad guy at the very end with Eldon and the well, I don't necessarily think I felt satisfied by that. But the story itself, everything else leading up to that, I did think was really strong. So I would give this a 3.75 stars. I think that is very fair for this. It's really good. I had a great time. I just don't necessarily feel like he stuck the denouement of the story, which, everything else makes up for it though. So if you're looking for something that's like a grown-up fairy tale and something that's Stephen King style, but a departure from his normal content, I think you really enjoy this. This would be really fun. It's just Stephen King trying his hand at something else.